Okay guys, so I'm going to go through the SS1 Performance Matrix with you. This should give you an understanding of how I operate behind the scenes when I'm dealing with your programs. You'll see that there's 6 sort of main circles and arrows that sort of go around like this, suggesting that there's some kind of like pattern behind all of them. So let's say that we're dealing with someone who is trying to get into running. However, they've got a few problems: ankle pain and knee pain. Their hips are very tight, their shoulders are pretty tight as well. They're not sure what they're doing with nutrition. They've done a bit of strength training before, but they've mainly used machines. They've come to me and they've basically said, Felix, I want to be able to run and move better. I need to make sure that, I don't sustain more injuries, and so I don't want to go and run myself into the ground again. In this particular case, I'm going to start by looking at, well, what do we want to be active and what do we want to put into phase 2 or phase 3? So you'll see that there's these buttons here: inactive, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, etc. I think we definitely want all of the left segment circles or left segment aspects of the program to be active. Quite rare that one of those will not be active. I think what we need to probably do with this person is get their function and circulation working really well before we put them into any kind of strength training program. So I'm going to put down strength training as phase 2. Calisthenics, I'm not so sure. They might not necessarily need this, they're just trying to go running. Maybe what this person needs in the long term is some good quality bodyweight training as a sort of thing to add variation to their strength training. Maybe part of the reason why they've suffered these injuries in the past is they might have had a massage and physio, etc., and been mobilized, but then they didn't actually utilize that new level of mobilization, and therefore it just kind of went back to how it was before again. So the foundational strength training in the case of this person is quite important to kind of keep their body open. Like when the barbell's on their back, they're opening out their chest and producing kind of like a positive body position. So maybe I will keep calisthenics in, and I'm going to decide off the top of my head that it's going to be in phase 3. And then finally, the sport, and running falls under a sport, is actually going to be in phase 4, because as soon as they start running again, that's when the impact happens. And we're going to basically make sure that we get them back to running at the right time. And if they progress quickly, that might be super fast, it might be a matter of weeks. If it turns out they've got more specific issues that we need to deal with, then that might take a little bit longer. So it turns out, let's say that this person has a really good osteo, okay? So that's good for me, because I need to find a way to get this person sorted as soon as possible. I think that after looking at their area, which is somewhere in Dubai, they happen to also have a really good level 5 sports massage therapist who's got some good content online that I found, and these 2 people are going to be massively helpful to help this client of mine get back to where they were before. So I might just put a quick note under the osteo saying thoracic, and I might put a note next to the massage saying full body. Now that's going to be something that I would then explain to the client down the line, but those are 2 things that, having watched their movement patterns on phase 2, I might be looking at them thinking, I think this person might need a bit of help from some knowledgeable professionals on how to unlock their body. I'm just going to breeze through it bit by bit. So we've got a function and circulation chart here. This is kind of where the whole thing begins. You'll see that there's lots of notes here about steps and saunas and steady state cardio down here as well. However, the thing that's probably a little bit new is this SFT system. So you've got all of these different parts of the body, the lumbar being the lower back, thoracic being the upper back, cervical being by your neck, different parts of the spine, and sort of front hip and all this sort of thing. Now, to keep it simple, S is sagittal, F is frontal, and T is transverse. So basically this is forwards and backwards movements is sagittal, side to side movements is frontal, and transverse is like rotation. We have a situation where we've got all of these different parts of the body, and using the videos that were submitted on phase 2, I'm now going to start filling out this SFT sort of traffic light system. So we might say, look at the foot and ankle. We've got a foot model here. This is the right foot and ankle. I might have observed in the video that as this person, say, steps forward and like reaches their hands upwards, I noticed that their front leg, that was the front leg before they stepped forward, I noticed that reacted really well, and that is basically dorsiflexion. So I happened to see that their foot moved very well. As their tibia and fibula moved forward, the foot reacted and there wasn't any inhibition. So let's say in the case of this person, I'm happy with that. So I'm going to put it under a green marker. So that means that we're basically sorted. I'm happy with how that right foot and ankle moves. As opposed to when the tibia and fibula move forward, the heel got dragged off the ground because the foot and ankle complex couldn't move. And we're just going to do the right foot and then we're going to move on. Then I saw them lunge to the side. I saw them lunge to one side, and then I basically got them to step across the foot and lunge the other way. And then when I was looking at how their foot and ankle complex moves then, I was thinking, okay, well, we've got a little bit of eversion here and a little bit of inversion there, or a little bit of pronation here and a little bit of supination there. I was thinking, well, actually, this looks a bit funny because this person seems to be able to evert quite well, okay, but then they seem to not really be inverting very well. So that might mean that they were potentially, they suffered some kind of issue with the foot and ankle complex, and it's shut down their ability to invert. So that's going to be a problem because we don't want the foot only going one way and not the other. If they're going to be running, they need to both invert and evert. Therefore, we've got a red marker. So that's my job, to tell that person how to mobilize that foot and ankle complex. You'll see that there's also the transverse. What I need to do then is look at the right foot again, finally. We're looking at, say, we've got some internal rotation here, external rotation there, or in other words, maybe they turn, this is their right foot, so let's say that they turn a little bit towards their left. Well, that means that that's relative external rotation, or if they turn to their right, their tibia and fibula moves to the right, that means that's relative internal rotation. So this could be kind of an interesting one. Maybe their foot doesn't move that well on the frontal plane. That might actually affect the transverse plane. So we might be looking at a little bit of inhibition here. We might be looking at a few things that need to be addressed, but maybe there is some movement, so I'm going to put this in yellow. What I've done here is I've just taken you through fundamentally what I'm observing when I'm looking at the whole body, but I just did it for the foot and ankle, so you can just kind of see a little bit about how I'm thinking. Let's say that we've got these green, yellow and red markers, hopefully mostly green, throughout function and circulation. Wonderful. Okay, now I know what's going on, and the person that I'm training or the person that I'm consulting with, they also know what's going on. They know all of the aspects of the body which they need to improve on. We need that function, ideally green across the board, maybe with a few yellows here and there, but they're going to use the exercise prescriptions that I provide. They're going to use some of the mobilization techniques that I'm putting forward as well. But they're also going to be able to communicate more effectively with their osteopath and with their sports massage therapist. Rather than just going, oh, I feel pretty tight, they can go in and say, right, this is the specific mobilization. This guy, SS1 Performance, has told me that it's my, I don't know, it's my gastrocnemius and my soleus need to be released, and then, you know, my piriformis and my glute needs to be released, and basically some of the plantar fascia needs some work, and yeah, you can get a little bit more specific with this sort of stuff. When it comes to the foot and ankle, there might be some specific muscles that I might look at. I might say I would like to do, if I was in Dubai, I would be doing a release on your tibialis anterior, or tibialis posterior muscles to get the foot moving in a certain way. So all of this information can then be used to take to someone to get right to the point and save you a hell of a lot of time, energy and effort. Let's say we've done all of that. That's just one of the 6 aspects, but the other ones are quite straightforward to go through. The next one is nutrition. Well, nutrition, that's quite a subjective thing, but then this person happens to be in Dubai. Maybe it's mostly air conditioned, but at the end of the day, I'm probably going to want them to consume, let's say, 3 litres of water. For various reasons, we might just put their calories at 2,500. That's absolutely just, you know, whatever, we're just kind of pretending that this is someone who's like a real person. Then I might set their protein, fats and everything else. The nutrition part is also going to be based on whether it's a training day or a non-training day. So for example, we might say 3 litres training, okay? And then we put a / or something like that, and then it might be 2.5 on rest days. Hypothetically, this is going to be a subjective thing based on the person that I'm dealing with at the time. So then you start to build out a basic nutrition plan, and then on left segment notes, we might put a little bit of something about breakfast. Okay, we need, let's say, 50 grams of protein. We might need something with some fats and some fiber. It could be an avocado, fats and fiber, avo, question mark. Maybe there's still a bit of work to be done with this person to find out what they actually like to eat. You can see what's going to happen as I start to build this out bit by bit. The third one is behavioural patterns. Now, a lot of the questions from the consultation form in phase 1 involve asking you what your perception of your own mental energy is. What's your home stress life? What are your home stress levels versus your career stress levels? What was your historic weight and things like this? Were you 90 kilos your whole life, from the sort of early adulthood, or were you sort of 70 one year and 80 the other year? We're trying to get your behavioral patterns or your psychological sort of awareness, let's say, of what's going on as high as possible. So we've got all these things about diary management. If someone says to me, oh, I don't have time, all right, that's quite a statement, because I know people that work 60, 70, sometimes 80 hours a week who still have time, so this is always an interesting one. So we might have a diary that we might be looking at, finding out like what's the objective truth behind how much time you've got. Sleep management, maybe someone has great sleep, but we need to look at the time and the quality. We might be looking at some supplements here. Put it this way, if someone's not getting any sleep, then we're going to have a whole host of difficulties when it comes to them progressing. So if we're trying to get all of those traffic lights from reds and yellows into greens, we need to make sure that the sleep is managed quite well. It needs to be, of a certain time and a certain quality. So we might be looking at, I don't know, magnesium glycinate, hypothetically, right? It's not that it's going to help someone sleep, but what it might do is help their muscles to relax a little bit more. Maybe they're trying to take magnesium and they're taking oxide, and that's not working very well for them. So then we want a glycinate chelate, which might help them to get a more restful, let's say, physiological environment for the body, which might translate to a bit better sleep. But if that doesn't work, we might look at other options as well. Now, my scope of practice is performance nutrition, so obviously I have to be careful about going too far in that regard. We might find that actually just from training properly and eating well and hydrating and being sort of aware of when to try and relax and when to push your body, that might actually translate to sleep, good sleep patterns itself. So the behavioural pattern stuff, we're just going to go through all of those. We're going to make sure their goals are realistic, that they're not trying to gain 10 kilos of muscle and lose 10 kilos of fat at the same time, whilst also trying to get your running back in the game from when you haven't run for a few years. All of this stuff is very important because it makes sure that people stay on track and they don't feel like they're not achieving anything. Sometimes people feel like that, but they're actually just trying to do 2 or 3 things at the same time, where actually it might be best to focus on one first. We're going to move from the left segment onto the right segment now. So we're going to start thinking about the foundational strength. Now, this person is going to be doing lots of running. That means that they need high bone mineral density. They need to have, good solid sort of cartilaginous tissues around the joints to protect the joints, and synovial fluid and everything that's kind of going to keep them lubricated. They need to have joints that move well. They need to be able to exert force with their muscles, and the muscles need to be strong and capable of delivering that sort of constant impact through running. And maybe this person's got some ideas to do some interesting runs, mountain runs, things like that. The foundational strength, I might set some basic markers of strength. First of all, I might go to squats. Now, right now this is set up as 0.75 times body weight to 1.5. Well, I don't think this person maybe needs to worry too much about that sort of thing. Let's say that they are a fairly sort of, slim-ish person, but they're carrying a bit of extra body fat, but they're not, not a massive person or anything. They don't need to lose tons of weight. So first of all, I might say, well, 5 rep max, is that going to help us that much? That's kind of quite strength-based. Plus, I might not necessarily want them trying to do a 5 rep max if their function and circulation joint situation is not exactly as I'd want it. Maybe it might be better to look at a 10 rep max because that's the kind of programming that we're going to put them on. We want the muscles to have to tolerate metabolic stress so that when they're going into their runs, you know, their muscles have a good ability to turn over lactic acid and deal with the hydrogen ions and all of that good stuff. So maybe we're going to look at a 10 rep max and maybe something like a 0.8 body weight. Maybe they don't need to be the best squatter in the world. Perhaps in this case, what we want is for them to just be able to do good full range squats where the pelvic crease goes to the same level as their patella, and they don't even need to be able to do their full body weight. And it's just a marker of hip function, it's a marker of core function, it's also a marker of their ability to hold a bar behind their back, which means that, you know, they've got the ability to release the tension from their chest, which maybe they're a bit internally rotated at the moment. And so, you know, then it turns out, well, I asked them, well, how much, what's your 10 rep max for squats? And they say, oh, I don't know, it's 50 kilos. And they happen to weigh, let's say, 75 kilos. It's like, okay, so 0.8 of the body weight, you know, let's just say that for the sake of me doing a video right now, because my maths is rubbish, I'm just going to say that I want them to do 10 rep max with their body weight, okay? Well, they can do 50 kilo squats, they weigh 75 kilos, so we're kind of doing all right. We're not too bad, we're around here. That means we're just coming out of the yellow zone and we're going to be into the green zone soon. So again, it's just that same thing of having a basic understanding of where someone is and where they need to go. And if every single one of these green markers end up sort of going all the way to the edge, then that's great. That means that we've got someone who's hit their first set of goals. You know, that's obviously a very positive thing. It means that there is a means to an end. We're not just endlessly going to start moving their squats up and up and up when it's unnecessary, because that introduces additional risk to the person and doesn't necessarily benefit them that much. Okay, and there's always later phases for strength development. So that's phase 2. Now, for example, right segment notes. Okay, we need to look at rotator cuff. Hypothetically, right? If their rotator cuff function is not great, I don't see how we're going to get that bar behind their back. Maybe they're going to get some inflammation. They're not going to be particularly impressed with me and or the trainer that they've hired in Dubai, let's say, to do the job. So first of all, we need to understand that their rotator cuff needs warming up. They need to do certain movement patterns, hopefully big global patterns that feel really meaningful rather than lots of little ones, but who knows what we need to do here. There might be a few notes around that there. On to calisthenics. There's really advanced stuff up top here, muscle ups and front levers. I don't think this person's going to be worried about too much of that stuff, but I think once they start hitting these high markers on their squats, let's say, I'm going to tell them, look, I just want you to maintain those squats. I want you to come in and do them once a week and make sure that your strength doesn't go back down again. And actually what we'll do is we'll try and get you into some more calisthenics training. So what we might do is we might look at pistol squat. Rather than hammering throwing loads of weight on the bar on their back, we might look at pistol squats and then try to get to the point where we can do 3 sets of 6, and then there might be we might be doing them from like a 20 or 40 centimeter box. The calisthenics program is, you know, again, we can write additional notes here. We can just say pistol squats are done on a 20 centimeter box, and then there will probably be a separate set of notes that have that calisthenics program on them. But at least from this one page, we've got the overview of everything. And then finally, we get to phase 4, which is including our running, and then we've got athleticism and sport. So most of these things are maybe not necessary. We've got running, and then we've got running on variable terrain as well. So maybe we've got 2 different types of running that we're going to worry about. So we're going to delete some of these other sports here just to keep it nice and simple. And then we're going to look at athleticism. There's some athletic elements to running. We probably want to get a little bit of plyometric work done once they've gotten to this phase 4. Their function and circulation, traffic lights are all pretty much green at this point. Cardio endurance. Yeah, I think we probably want them to work on their cardio endurance. How might we do that? Well, I don't know, we might say the AS bike, the assault bike. Maybe we don't really want this person to develop loads of endurance through just running because of the high impact it's going to have on their joints. Perhaps I'm going to say, look, let's get your endurance up through the assault bike, and that way we've got a nice balance of what's going on. So your joints get a bit of a rest, and you know, you can still run, but you're doing a bit of a mix of different things. Coordination for running, some people say probably there's something to be done, but I don't think we need that. Linear speed, yeah, I'd say a little bit of speed training is probably not a bad idea, right? Because we want this person to be able to go to different levels of speed and actually know how to coordinate those patterns. So maybe we're going to look at sprints, and we're going to use a curve running machine. So that's our speed training. It's a linear speed training. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff on this program that is not filled out, but I'm just giving you guys an idea of how I fill it out, and that way you understand what is going on in the background, and also hopefully a little bit about how I look at the body, how I look at the mind, and the approach that I'm taking with SS1 Performance. Have a look at the other videos, any that you haven't watched, and that will give you information about the other parts to the 3 phases of the SS1 Performance system.